Pop quiz, is this Pokemon a water type or an ice type, and why does that matter? With all the different flavors of Pokemon types we have to enjoy in the video games, it's no surprise that some will often overlap. I've seen it brought up in question why ice and water are two different types, as well as why there's a distinction between rock and ground. In real life, water and ice are the same form of matter, just in different states, that being liquid and solid. Rock and ground correlate to rocks and dirt, which while technically different are pretty close. The first justification that might come to mind is that these types are separate for game balance, and that definitely has some merit to it, but the primary reason to make a distinction between all of these is theme. Again, functionally, ice and water are the same, but thematically, they're very different. Water represents fluidity, freedom, purity, life, and healing. Ice represents rigidity, grace, or even serves as an opposite to water. Rock or stone represents history, solid foundation, or even obstacles in your way if you're the one faced with it. Ground, or dirt or sand, can be the basis of future growth, can easily be moved or shifted, but is also a part of a much larger source. And even when you bring in other media franchises, it will depend on the type of story they're attempting to tell or the character that they're trying to build. In the world of Avatar, sure, water and ice can be used by the same benders, but not every bender utilizes both. The same goes for earthbenders, which can use rock, sand, or heck even metal. While there is some crossover in usage, there are specialists in different aspects. Some people just might not be skilled or comfortable at using both. Katara easily bends both water and ice, but the swamp benders almost exclusively use water. Toph is great with rocks and even invents metal bending, but has a difficult time with sand. These are all aspects of their character and their attitude. Bionicle is another story that makes the distinction between water and ice and earth and stone, while also having their own differences. We also see this in the Pokemon of each type. While some early ice Pokemon were also water types, most of them past the first generation continue growing into a more land-based group. They all have different battle styles and physical structure. Most water types resemble aquatic or semi-aquatic creatures we know in the real world, while a good amount of ice type Pokemon are made out of ice themselves or have it as some part of their body. This isn't true with all ice types though, but it's worth noting that it's a more common trend with them. A water type would easily and freely swim through the water, while an ice type would be so strong and set that they would be ice themselves. A lot of rock types are made out of rock, while most ground types are creatures that live in or burrow in the ground. There are exceptions for Pokemon that are made out of clay or sand, which would distinctly be called ground. And when you have the basis for the thematic approach to attributing these types to different Pokemon, that's when you can start building the basis for the balancing of the type matchups. Grass beats water because one absorbs the other for nutrients, but ice beats grass because most plants can't survive a harsh winter. Flying is immune to ground because birds fly above it, but rock beats flying because it's harder and can be more easily concentrated and thrown. And when you look at the trainers who often use these types, it becomes even more clear when there's an intentional difference between them, especially when you look at trainers who appear in the same region and generation. Misty is young, active, and quick on her feet, while Lorelei is calm, calculating, and experienced. They both embody their types so well. I don't want this to turn into a full character design breakdown like usual, because I would then end up comparing and contrasting literally dozens of characters, even just looking at like 4 trainers of each generation. But just know that their designs are all great executions of these ideas, and you can really see the difference when you take 2 of them and look at them together. Though I think comparing these types to each other doesn't do them the justice they deserve. Again, in real life these are similar, but in real life we also don't have dragons, fairies, or psychics. I think a lot of this comes from the fact that these typings overlap so frequently in the very first generation. 151 is a lot of Pokemon, but split up across so many different elements doesn't give each a whole lot to work with. And the fact that there are like 3 evolution lines of Pokemon that are both water and ice types set the precedent very early on. And in the trading card game, water and ice have been combined into one energy type since the very beginning. Heck, rock and ground have even had to share their color with fighting. This one is more understandable because in a card game it works better to have a tighter amount of colors. If anything, this ensures that ice Pokemon remain more viable and supported. In the video games, ice is the type with the least members, while in the trading card game they can benefit from support made for water Pokemon and vice versa. And this can make for some cool combinations, but it does some weird things to the theming when you end up playing Melanie and Greninja in the same deck. But that's my answer as to why ice and water and rock and ground are separate. A little question I've had rolling around in my head for a while until it finally snowballed into a nice little video. I do really like ice types and I feel they do get a little overshadowed, but more recently they've been making their comeback. So let me know which Pokemon of these 4 types are your favorite. And with that, I'd like to sign off, but I can't really think of a good pun to end this script that includes water, ice, rock, and ground because they are all different types after all. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, especially the Great Gators, Cheeseburger Lasers, Gavnuts, Justin R, Cosmo Zero, Michaela, Mr. Pig Puncher, Phantom Pyro, Quago, Volity, and Pastel Blood. If you would like to support, get your name shouted out here as well as access to emotes and comments, live streams, and some early videos, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter as well, but anyway, this has been GatorEX, and I'll catch you all later.
Discover the strength to rule a kingdom in the Pokemon trading card game, Sword and Shield, Chilling Reign. Products sold separately. Booster packs of 10 cards vary by product. Cards vary by pack.